A vast field of ancient stones stands silently in the French countryside. Are these just scattered rocks, or a lost map of the stars carved into the earth itself? This is the Carnac Stones, one of history's most captivating puzzles. By the end of this journey, you will discover the compelling evidence that our Neolithic ancestors may have built a sophisticated astronomical observatory. We will uncover how these stones might track the sun and moon with impossible precision, and ask what forgotten knowledge lies hidden in their patterns. What does it mean if an entire cosmos was once mapped at our feet? Stretching for more than 2 miles along the coast of Brittany, the Carnac alignments are a breathtaking sight. Picture not a handful of monuments, but a vast army of granite sentinels, over 3,000 strong, standing in eerie, silent rows. They march across the landscape in 3 primary groups, known as Ménec, Kermario, and Kerlescan. Each of these alignments is a dense collection of stones, from ones you could step over to towering megaliths twice the height of a person, all arranged with a strange and deliberate order. For centuries, visitors have stood where we stand now, feeling a mix of awe and profound confusion. What force, what grand design could have compelled a prehistoric society to undertake such a colossal task? The purpose was so completely lost to time that later cultures invented their own myths, claiming the stones were a Roman legion turned to rock by a wizard. The truth, however, is far more intriguing than any legend. We are left with a field of silent clues, a puzzle on a monumental scale, and the haunting question of what message was so important it needed to be written in stone for the ages. The sheer scale of Carnac forces us to ask who could command such a project and when. The prevailing answer points to a pre-Celtic society of Neolithic farmers who began this work over 6,000 years ago, a staggering era from around 4,500 to 3,300 years before the Common Era. This was a time before metal tools, before the wheel was widely used in this part of the world, and long before the pyramids of Egypt rose from the desert. So who were these people? They were not the nomadic hunter-gatherers of a dimmer past, but a settled agricultural community. They cleared dense forests, cultivated the land, and built permanent villages. This shift to farming created a surplus of food and time, allowing for specialization. Among them were surely the architects and engineers of their day, individuals who could plan, organize, and direct a workforce for generations. Were they farmers who looked to the stars to guide their planting, or were they led by a powerful class of priest astronomers who held the secrets of the heavens? The stones themselves suggest a society with a deep, unified purpose, one capable of a project that would outlive its creators by millennia. Pinpointing the exact era of their construction, however, is a challenge that still puzzles archaeologists. Unlike a modern building with a cornerstone date, the stones offer no written records. Dating relies on sophisticated techniques like radiocarbon analysis of organic materials found buried with the stones, but even this is not always straightforward. This precise dating is not just an academic exercise, it is absolutely crucial. If we can confirm the stones were aligned with celestial events 6,000 years ago, we must then ask what that society knew of the cosmos. Their astronomical knowledge would not be a quaint superstition, but a sophisticated, hard-won science written in granite, a permanent record of a lost world's genius. That enduring mystery has for centuries been a blank canvas for the human imagination. Long before archaeologists arrived with their tools, local folklore provided its own answer. The most persistent legend tells of a Roman legion marching across the Brittany countryside. As the story goes, they were pursued by the early Christian Pope Cornelius, who, to stop them, turned the entire army to stone where they stood. This myth gave the stones a dramatic, almost biblical origin, transforming silent monoliths into petrified soldiers frozen in time. It was a tale that made sense to a later world familiar with Roman power, yet completely unaware of the true, far more ancient builders. As scholarship evolved, so did the theories. In the 18th and 19th centuries, antiquarians looked at the long, sinuous rows and saw something else entirely, a great earth-hugging serpent. They proposed the alignments were a vast site for serpent worship, a symbol of fertility or a chthonic deity, with the stone rows tracing the undulating body of a mythical beast. This idea connected the stones to known religious practices from other ancient cultures, offering a spiritual explanation for their grand scale. But the 20th century brought even more speculative ideas. The sheer improbability of a Stone Age society achieving such a feat led some to look beyond Earth itself. Proposals emerged that the Carnac Stones were landing markers or navigation beacons for ancient astronauts, built with the help of otherworldly knowledge. Others connected them to the mythical lost continent of Atlantis, suggesting they were the work of a sophisticated, advanced civilization that vanished beneath the waves, leaving only these cryptic markers behind. What is truly fascinating is not whether these fringe theories are correct, but what they reveal. The very existence of such wild guesses, from petrified legions to alien architects, underscores the profound and unsettling power of the Carnac mystery. When faced with something that defies simple explanation, the human mind will race to fill the void, weaving stories that are as grand and mysterious as the stones themselves. Yet all these speculations, from folklore to fantasy, would eventually give way to a more grounded yet equally breathtaking possibility. The 20th century saw a radical new theory emerge, one that looked not to legends but to the sky. The astronomical hypothesis was born, proposing that the Carnac Stones are not a petrified army or a serpent temple, but a vast, ancient map of the stars. This idea gained serious traction through the meticulous work of researchers like Alexander Thom, a professor of engineering who brought a scientist's eye to these ancient monuments. Thom spent decades surveying hundreds of megalithic sites across Britain and France, and at Carnac he saw something others had missed. He noted that the long, parallel rows were not randomly oriented. Instead, they seemed to possess a startling geometric precision, aligning with key points on the horizon where the sun and moon would have risen and set thousands of years ago. The initial clues were deceptively simple. If you stand at one end of the Kermario alignment at the dawn of the summer solstice, the rows point directly toward the rising sun. Other rows appear to frame the extreme rising and setting points of the moon, events that only occur every 18.6 years. This was not a vague connection. It suggested a society that had observed the heavens for generations, patiently tracking the slow, complex cycles of celestial bodies, and then immortalizing that knowledge in a permanent terrestrial observatory. What began as a simple observation of a solstice sunrise opened a door to a far more profound understanding of our ancestors, framing them not as primitive stone worshippers, but as the world's first astronomers. But how could a society of farmers track the sun with such precision? The proof is written in the landscape itself, a silent celestial clock calibrated in stone. Take the grand menhir Brisset. Though it lies fallen now, this colossal stone was once the largest known standing megalith in the world. When it stood upright, its position was far from random. Researchers have found that its long axis points directly toward the distant island of Gavrinis, a site with its own decorated cairn. More importantly, this line continues to a specific notch on the horizon where the sun would have set on the equinoxes, those 2 days each year when day and night are of equal length. This was not a solitary marker. Across the Carnac complex, other stone rows act like massive sightlines. If you were to stand at the western end of the Ménec alignments at dawn on the winter solstice, the shortest day of the year, the rows would channel your view directly toward the rising sun. On the summer solstice, the longest day, the sun would set in perfect alignment with another set of stones. Think of what this meant for the people who built it. Their entire world, their survival, depended on the cycles of the seasons. Knowing precisely when to plant crops, when to harvest, and when the harsh winter would begin was a matter of life and death. The solstices and equinoxes were not just dates on a calendar, they were the fundamental pillars of their year. By marking these celestial turning points with unshakable granite, they transformed abstract astronomical knowledge into a tangible, community-wide guide. The stones became a shared, permanent almanac, ensuring that every generation would know the rhythm of the seasons, a rhythm dictated by the sun and set in stone by their ancestors. The sun's reliable path is one thing, but the moon's journey is a far more complex dance. While the sun rises and sets within a consistent band on the horizon throughout the year, the moon operates on a much longer, more intricate timetable. Its rising and setting points swing back and forth across the sky over a cycle that takes 18.6 years to complete. At the peak of this cycle, an event known as the Major Standstill, the moon reaches its most extreme northerly and southerly positions, far beyond where the sun ever travels. To a society watching the sky, this would have been a dramatic and significant event, a slow-motion pendulum swing of celestial power. The astonishing proposal is that the builders of Carnac did not just track this cycle, they built a permanent monument to predict it. Some of the longest stone rows, particularly within the Kerlescan alignment, are oriented with a precision that seems to target these extreme lunar positions. This was not about marking a single night, but about commemorating an entire era, a generational shift in the heavens. Think of the dedication this required. An elder who witnessed one major standstill as a young adult might not live to see the next. Knowledge of this cycle would have to be passed down with absolute fidelity from one generation to the next, a sacred trust written not on parchment, but in the very layout of their world. This transforms our view of the Carnac builders from simple farmers who watched the sky into true astronomers, custodians of a deep, long-term science. They were mapping time itself, using stone to capture the rhythm of a celestial body that governed tides, myths, and perhaps even their own rituals. The silent rows become more than a calendar. They are a testament to human patience and our timeless desire to find order in the cosmos. The idea of a terrestrial star map takes this cosmic connection a step further. What if the sprawling Carnac complex is not just an observatory for tracking the sun and moon, but a deliberate mirror of the night sky itself, a grand cartography of the constellations laid out upon the Earth? Proponents of this theory look at the vast, sweeping curves of the Ménec alignments and see a possible representation of our own galaxy, the Milky Way, etched in granite across the Breton landscape. They point to specific, dense clusters of stones and suggest they might correspond to prominent star patterns, like the three bright stars of Orion's belt or the tight, sparkling knot of the Pleiades cluster. The sheer scale of the site makes this a compelling thought that our ancestors sought to bring the heavens down to Earth, to walk among the stars in a very literal sense. Yet this beautiful idea is fraught with immense challenges. The most significant is a slow, celestial wobble known as the precession of the equinoxes. Our planet slowly wobbles on its axis over a cycle of approximately 26,000 years, and this gradual shift means the entire night sky, the position of every constellation, slowly changes over millennia. The sky that looked down on the builders of Carnac 6,000 years ago was not the same sky we see today. The North Star was a different star entirely, and the constellations rose and set in different positions. So if the stones are a star map, they are a map to a lost sky, a celestial arrangement that has long since drifted from our view. This forces a profound question. If we are to decode this potential map, we must first rewind the clock and reconstruct the precise night sky as it was when the last stone was set in place. The silent stones hold their pattern, waiting for us to find the correct key to a heaven that has turned without them. The silent stones may hold a secret more profound than simple alignments. Alexander Thom, the same engineer who mapped the celestial sightlines, proposed a theory that shook the foundations of archaeology. After surveying hundreds of megalithic sites, he became convinced that the builders used a universal unit of measurement, a standard length he called the megalithic yard. This was not a rough estimate. Tom argued it was a precise unit, equivalent to about 2.72 feet, and he found evidence for it in the dimensions of stone circles and rows from Scotland to Brittany, including the grand alignments of Carnac. The staggering implication is that a sophisticated system of measurement, a common geometric language, was shared across prehistoric Europe. This was not the work of isolated, primitive villages, but of a coordinated culture with a deep understanding of mathematics and engineering. How else could they achieve such consistent, large-scale precision over such vast distances? At Carnac, this geometry becomes visible in the very shapes of the stone rows. They do not simply run in straight lines. Some of the alignments, particularly at Ménec and Kermario, form subtle, elegant curves. They sweep across the landscape in precise fan-like arrangements or even form complex egg-shaped patterns. To create these shapes with massive stones required more than just a keen eye. It demanded a masterful grasp of practical geometry, an ability to lay out arcs and curves on an immense scale. Why would they go to such trouble? If their goal was to create a true map of the stars, then precise geometry was not a luxury, it was an absolute necessity. The heavens are built on mathematical order. The paths of the stars and planets follow predictable geometric rules. To accurately translate that cosmic order onto the land, to ensure a specific stone cluster truly mirrored the angle between two stars, the builders would need a reliable and consistent way to measure and plot their grand design. The megalithic yard and the curved alignments are not just architectural quirks. They are the tools of the cartographer, the essential instruments needed to draw a faithful portrait of the night sky on the canvas of the earth. This transforms the site from a collection of markers into a single, coherent instrument, a masterpiece of prehistoric engineering designed to last until the stars themselves fell from the sky. This widespread megalithic culture suggests a shared intellectual universe, but the physical expression of that knowledge could not be more different. To truly grasp the uniqueness of Carnac, we must place it beside its most famous contemporary, Stonehenge. Both are masterpieces of the Neolithic world, both are oriented to the heavens, yet they achieve their goals in completely opposing ways. Stonehenge is a compact, concentrated circle of towering trilithons, a grand stage for ritual, enclosed and powerful. Carnac, by contrast, is an open, sprawling network of lines, a sprawling text written across the landscape. One is an architectural statement, the other is a cartographic one. Their similarities, however, are what truly bind them. Both monuments capture the same celestial events, the solstices and the moon's complex cycle. The famous heel stone at Stonehenge marks the summer solstice sunrise, just as the rows at Kermario do. This parallel is profound. It means that the desire to track the cosmos was not a local obsession of a single tribe in Brittany, but a driving force across prehistoric Europe. They were speaking the same astronomical language, even if they wrote it using different dialects of stone. The sheer distance between these sites makes this shared knowledge extraordinary. How did these ideas travel? Was it through trade routes, seasonal migrations, or a slow diffusion of knowledge from a common, ancient source? This points not to isolated communities dabbling in stargazing, but to a connected pan-European culture with a deep, unified understanding of their universe. They looked up at the same sky and felt the same compelling need to build permanent reminders of its rhythms, creating a legacy that would outlast empires. But a simple grid of lines cannot explain the deliberate artistry of the stones. To walk among the alignments is to sense a hidden syntax, a silent code written in the very texture of the site. The stones are not uniform soldiers in a rank. They create a rhythm, a visual language. At the head of a row, you might find a truly colossal monolith, a giant that stands twice the height of a person. As your eye travels down the line, the stones gradually diminish in size, stepping down to smaller, more numerous blocks before culminating in another large stone. This is not a random assortment. It feels like a deliberate crescendo and decrescendo, a visual pulse across the landscape. What could this variation signify? If this is indeed a star map, perhaps the largest stones do not mark single stars, but entire bright clusters or even significant planets. The smaller stones fanning out behind them could represent fainter stars in the same constellation, their size corresponding to their brightness or magnitude in the ancient sky. The pattern forces us to read the site not as a simple list, but as a hierarchy, a way of showing importance and relationship in the celestial sphere. Then there are the gaps, the deliberate spaces between certain stones or entire sections. These are not errors or missing pieces. They feel as intentional as the pauses in a piece of music. In some areas, the dense rows part to create a clear, empty avenue, a processional way that leads the eye toward a specific point on the distant horizon. Could these voids be just as important as the solids? They might represent the dark spaces between constellations, the empty void of the Milky Way, or even the predicted path of a wandering planet as it moved through the star field. Imagine a priest astronomer using these gaps as a giant tracking board. By observing which star rose or set in a specific empty lane over the course of a year, they could mark the passage of time with incredible accuracy. The stones and the spaces between them work in concert, the positive and negative space together creating a complete picture. The most compelling evidence for a complex code lies in the curves. Many of the rows are not straight at all. They sweep across the land in graceful, geometric arcs, converging and diverging in a way that feels both organic and meticulously planned. This is not the work of people who simply stretched a rope between 2 points. This is sophisticated geometry applied on a breathtaking scale. What narrative could these curves be telling? One possibility is that they trace the actual apparent paths of planets. Unlike the fixed stars, planets like Venus or Mars wander against the backdrop of the constellations, following looping, retrograde paths. To map these complex journeys in stone would be an act of supreme astronomical ambition. Alternatively, these sinuous, converging lines might tell a story from mythology. Perhaps they chart the journey of a hero, a god, or a soul through the heavens, a celestial epic written not in words but in the very shape of the earth. Each curve, each cluster, each giant stone could be a chapter in a lost saga, a permanent record of how a civilization saw itself reflected in the stars. The silent code of Carnac awaits its Rosetta Stone, a key that can translate these patterns of stone and space back into the language of the cosmos. Yet our focus on the long, marching rows tells only part of the story. Scattered across the same landscape, often in the shadow of the great alignments, stand other mysterious structures, the dolmens and tumuli. These are the chambered tombs and great earthen mounds of Carnac, and they are frequently overlooked in the grand astronomical theory. A dolmen appears as a massive stone table, a giant capstone balanced precariously on supporting uprights, while a tumulus is a vast, man-made hill often covering one or more of these stone chambers. They are unequivocally tombs, the final resting places for the Neolithic people who built this entire complex. But what if their purpose was not solely for the dead? What if they, too, were integral components of the celestial map? Imagine a priest astronomer standing before the great tumulus of St. Michael, a colossal earthwork that dominates the area. Its summit offers an unobstructed 360-degree view of the horizon. This was not just a burial mound, it was a perfect, elevated platform for observing the sky. From this vantage point, one could watch the stars rise and set over the long stone rows below, using the alignments as a giant ground-level instrument. The tomb itself, a link to the ancestors, becomes a bridge to the heavens, a place where the realm of the dead physically connected with the cosmos above. Perhaps the dolmens served as more than just tombs. Their specific placement might have been astronomically significant. A dolmen's entrance passage is often precisely oriented, not randomly, but toward a significant celestial event like the winter solstice sunrise or the rising of a particularly important star. In this way, the tomb transforms into a ceremonial instrument. On one sacred dawn each year, the rising sun would have shot a beam of light directly down the dark passageway, illuminating the inner chamber for the first time all year. This dramatic event would have linked the cyclical rebirth of the sun with the ancestral spirits within, a powerful fusion of astronomy, spirituality, and memory. The dolmens and tumuli were not separate from the alignments, they were anchor points in the grand design. A specific tomb might mark the position of a pole star in the ancient sky, while a cluster of dolmens could outline a constellation of great mythic importance. The entire Carnac landscape begins to look less like a collection of separate monuments and more like a single, integrated system, a sacred geography where every stone, every mound, and every empty space worked in concert to mirror the cosmos and connect the people to the eternal cycles of the universe, life and death. This bridge between earth and sky was not just a scientific tool, it was a spiritual necessity. For a people whose lives were governed by the seasons and illuminated only by the sun, moon, and stars, the cosmos was alive with meaning. The patterns in the night sky were not random dots of light. They were a grand tapestry of gods, heroes, and animals, a celestial narrative that explained the world and their place within it. If the stones are a star map, then they are also a storybook, preserving the most important myths of a culture that left no written records. We can look to the mythologies of the later Celtic peoples who inhabited this region for clues. Their stories are filled with powerful deities associated with the sky, like the god Lugh, a master of all arts and a solar figure, or the goddess Epona, linked to horses and the fertile earth. Perhaps the grand curve of the Ménec alignments, so often compared to the Milky Way, was seen by its builders as a celestial river, a path for the souls of the dead to travel into the afterlife. A dense cluster of stones might not just represent the Pleiades star cluster, but a group of 7 divine sisters or a magical sow with her litter of piglets, a powerful symbol of fertility and abundance in many Indo-European traditions. By mapping these constellations onto the Earth, the builders were doing more than just recording star positions. They were bringing their gods and their stories down to Earth, making the intangible forces of the universe tangible and present in their daily lives. The landscape itself became sacred, a physical manifestation of their entire cosmic worldview. Every hill, every spring, and every stone was imbued with spiritual significance, but the alignments were the ultimate act of sacred cartography. They were creating a permanent, ritual space where the community could walk among the stars, perform ceremonies that mirrored celestial events, and feel a direct physical connection to the divine. This was the ultimate purpose of the bridge. It allowed them to participate in the cosmic order, to ensure the sun would keep rising, the seasons would keep turning, and their stories would be remembered for as long as the stones themselves endured. This celestial interpretation, however, is not without its fierce critics. Many mainstream archaeologists urge caution, pointing to a fundamental problem known as the selection effect. With over 3,000 stones arranged in countless rows, they argue, it is statistically almost inevitable that you will find some that line up with significant solar or lunar events. If you search a landscape long enough, you can find alignments for anything from the rising of a particular star to the location of a distant hill. The danger, they say, is that we see what we want to see, projecting our own modern fascination with astronomy onto a people who may have had entirely different motivations. For these skeptics, the lack of direct evidence is deafening. Where are the carvings of stars or moons on the stones themselves? Where is the archaeological proof, like artifacts or burial goods, that explicitly links this culture to a complex study of the heavens? Without this concrete evidence, the entire astronomical theory remains an elegant but unproven hypothesis. It could be that the stones were territorial markers or a vast social and ceremonial space for seasonal gatherings, with any celestial alignments being purely secondary or even accidental. Proponents of the archaeoastronomy theory offer a powerful rebuttal to this skepticism. They agree that a single alignment could be dismissed as coincidence, but they argue that the evidence at Carnac is not a handful of lucky guesses. It is a consistent, repeating pattern. The same significant solar and lunar events are marked by multiple, independent stone rows across the entire complex. The summer solstice sunrise, the winter solstice sunset, the extreme moonrise of the major standstill, these are not isolated findings, they form a coherent system. The probability of so many precise alignments to so few key celestial events occurring purely by chance, they argue, is vanishingly small. This is not finding a pattern in randomness, it is recognizing a deliberate design. They counter the lack of direct evidence by pointing to the nature of the site itself. This was a pre-literate society. They did not write their knowledge down, they built it. The stones are their library, their scientific instrument, and their sacred text, all fused into one. The precision of the geometries, the use of a shared unit of measurement, and the sheer monumental effort all point toward a purpose far grander than simple land division. If it was only about territory, why the obsessive geometric order? If it was only for gatherings, why the specific orientations to the most complex cycles of the moon? The debate ultimately hinges on a question of interpretation. Are we looking at a sophisticated astronomical complex, or are we witnessing the powerful human tendency to find order in chaos? The stones themselves offer no easy answer, standing silent in the face of our modern arguments. The silent stones have kept their secrets for millennia, but modern technology is finally giving them a voice. Scientists are now using tools that see through Earth and time, probing the landscape with methods that would seem like magic to the original builders. One of the most powerful is LiDAR, which stands for light detection and ranging. A specialized aircraft flies over the site, firing millions of laser pulses at the ground. By measuring how long each pulse takes to bounce back, it creates an incredibly detailed three-dimensional map of the surface, digitally stripping away all the trees and undergrowth. What emerges is a pristine view of the ancient terrain, revealing patterns and geometries that are completely invisible to someone standing among the stones. The subtle curves of the alignments, the way they converge and fan out, become starkly clear from above. It is as if we are seeing the architect's original drawing for the first time, a grand design laid bare. Even more revealing is the view from below the surface. Ground-penetrating radar sends energy pulses into the Earth, painting a picture of what lies buried. This technology has made startling discoveries at Carnac. It has located the ghosts of stones that have long since fallen and been covered by soil, and it has found evidence of countless pits and post holes. These findings suggest the original complex was far more extensive and intricate than what we see today. What now appears as a field of 3,000 stones might have once been a vast network of 5,000 or more. Entire alignments have vanished, swallowed by the Earth. This dramatically changes the scale of the mystery. If the astronomical map theory is correct, then we have been trying to read a star chart with half the pieces missing. These newly discovered buried stones could be the missing stars, the crucial points that complete a constellation or confirm a lunar sightline. Each buried stone is a lost data point, and recovering their positions allows researchers to test the celestial alignments with a much fuller, more accurate model. The silent code of Carnac is being deciphered not with a Rosetta Stone, but with radar and lasers, offering a chance to see the complete masterpiece as its creators intended. Among the sprawling ranks of the Carnac alignments, one fallen giant commands a unique kind of awe. The Grand Menhir Brisset lies shattered, a colossal stone broken into 4 immense fragments that together weigh close to 300 tons. In its prime, this single monolith would have towered over the landscape, reaching a height of nearly 65 feet, making it the largest known standing stone in all of Europe. Its fall is a mystery in itself, perhaps the work of a deliberate toppling or a cataclysmic earthquake in antiquity. To stand beside its broken pieces is to feel the sheer ambition of its builders, for moving and erecting such a monster was a feat that pushes the limits of even our modern imagination. But its purpose is the greater enigma. Why dedicate such staggering effort to a single, solitary stone? Many researchers believe it was the ultimate astronomical foresight, a central anchor point for the entire complex. From its commanding position, an observer could have sighted the rising and setting of celestial bodies over distant, smaller stones or natural features on the horizon. It would have functioned as the fixed rear sight on a rifle, with the entire landscape serving as the barrel, precisely targeting cosmic events. Another theory suggests it acted as a giant gnomon for a monumental sundial. Its immense shadow cast by the sun would have swept across the terrain, its length and direction marking not just the hours of the day, but the changing seasons of the year. The tip of its shadow might have touched specific stones or mounds at the solstices and equinoxes, transforming the ground into a gigantic calendar. Or perhaps its role was even more specific, marking one singular, profoundly important celestial event. Its alignment points toward the distant island of Gavrinis, and that line continues to a notch on the horizon linked to the equinox sunset. Could this fallen giant have been a generational marker for an event that occurred only once in a lifetime, a celestial moment so significant it demanded a monument of unparalleled scale? Its silence is profound, a solitary key that might once have unlocked the entire system. To truly test the star map theory, we must journey back in time and look upward. Using advanced astronomical software, researchers can now simulate the precise night sky that would have hung over the Carnac alignment 6,500 years ago. This is not the familiar sky of today. The North Star was not Polaris, but a different star entirely, Thuban in the constellation Draco. The bright band of the Milky Way cut across the heavens in a slightly different angle, and the constellations we know were shifted, occupying new positions in this ancient celestial sphere. With this simulated sky as our guide, we can perform a remarkable experiment, overlaying the precise positions of the stone rows and clusters onto this reconstructed firmament. The question is simple yet profound. Do the stones mirror the stars? One compelling alignment emerges with the constellation Orion. Its three famous belt stars, Alnitak, Alnilam, and Mintaka, form a short, straight line that is unmistakable. When researchers plot these stars onto the ancient sky and then look at the Carnac landscape, a similar triple alignment of stones appears to match their pattern and angle with startling fidelity. Another potential match lies with the Pleiades star cluster. In the sky, this group appears as a tight, glittering knot of stars. On the ground, a specific, dense gathering of smaller stones within the Kermario alignments seems to echo this same compact formation. The most dramatic correlation might be with the Milky Way itself. The great, sweeping curve of the Ménec stone rose, when viewed from above, bears a striking resemblance to the luminous arc of our galaxy, as it would have stretched across that long-vanished sky. This visual demonstration is powerful because it moves beyond abstract theory into a testable, visual hypothesis. We are no longer just guessing, we are seeing a potential map come to life, stone by stone, star by star. The silent geometry of the Earth begins to whisper the secrets of a forgotten heaven. The stones of Carnac do not stand alone. To understand their true purpose, we must widen our view and see them as the centerpiece of a much grander design, one that stretches across the entire coast of Brittany. This region is a dense tapestry of Neolithic monuments, and sites like the Gavrinis Passage tomb are not separate attractions, but integral points in a vast regional network. The island of Gavrinis lies just a short boat ride away, and its tomb is a masterpiece in its own right. Within its dark, enclosed chamber, The walls are a breathtaking gallery of prehistoric art, covered in swirling spirals, concentric arcs, and enigmatic symbols carved into the stone with incredible skill. These are not random decorations. Many researchers interpret them as abstract representations of celestial bodies, star patterns, or even the sun's rays. The tomb's entrance passage is precisely oriented, and some believe it was designed to catch the light of the rising sun on a specific, significant morning of the year. What if the carvings inside are a key, a symbolic code for the very constellations and cosmic events that the Carnac alignments map on a giant scale? This suggests a sophisticated division of spiritual labor. Carnac, with its open, sprawling lines, was the public observatory, the place for communal ceremony and celestial tracking under the open sky. Gavrinis, by contrast, was the inner sanctum, a hidden, decorated chamber where the deepest secrets of the cosmos, learned from observing the stones, were preserved and passed down through generations. The connection is not just symbolic, it is physical. As mentioned before, the fallen grand menhir Brittany at Carnac points directly toward Gavrinis. This is no accident. It creates a tangible, visual axis between the two sites, a ley line of ancient knowledge connecting the grand observatory to the sacred repository. This implies that the entire landscape was deliberately choreographed. Other nearby mounds and standing stones become additional markers in this grand scheme, each one sited on a specific star or solar event, creating a web of intervisible points across the region. You could not see the entire network from one spot, but an initiate traveling from Carnac to Gavrinis to another distant menhir would be walking a pre-planned route through the heavens, tracing constellations with their feet. This transforms our understanding of Carnac's scale. It was not merely a field of stones, but the beating heart of a sacred geography that turned hundreds of square miles of coastline into a single, interactive map of the cosmos. The ambition of Carnac is matched only by the sheer physical effort required to build it. We must shift our gaze from the stars above to the earth below, to the practical, grueling work of moving mountains. These builders possessed no metal tools, no wheels, no domesticated animals for heavy labor. Their entire toolkit was stone, wood, bone, and raw human strength. The granite they used was quarried locally, likely pried from the bedrock using nothing more than wooden wedges. They would hammer these wedges into natural fissures in the rock and then soak them with water. As the wood swelled, it created immense pressure, slowly and deliberately cracking the stone along a clean line to yield a multi-ton block. It was a patient, percussive process, a battle of leverage and time. Once freed, the real challenge began, transporting a stone that could weigh 20 tons or more across miles of uneven terrain. The prevailing theory points to a system of log rollers and sledges. Imagine a massive sledge, a crude but sturdy platform of timber loaded with a single monolith. Teams of people would have hauled on ropes made of plant fiber or leather, while others constantly repositioned log rollers from the back to the front, creating a slow-moving, groaning conveyor belt of human effort. Every inch of progress was a hard-won victory against friction and gravity. Levers made from entire tree trunks provided the fine control, allowing them to pivot the stones, navigate gentle slopes, and make minute adjustments. This was not a task for a single season, but a generational project, a communal duty passed from parents to children. The coordination required was itself a form of engineering, a social technology as sophisticated as any machine. This grounding in reality makes their celestial achievement even more profound. They were not magicians or alien-assisted architects. They were farmers and artisans who used their profound understanding of physics and their immense collective will to literally rearrange their world, turning raw stone into a permanent record of their knowledge. But the stars held the key to their survival on the ground. This celestial map was not just a spiritual luxury, it was a practical tool of immense power. For a society dependent on farming, knowing the precise turn of the seasons was the difference between abundance and famine. The solstices and equinoxes were not abstract astronomical events. They were the fundamental pillars of their year, the unshakable dates that dictated the entire rhythm of life. The winter solstice marked the symbolic death and rebirth of the sun, a promise that the long, cold nights would finally begin to shorten. The summer solstice was the peak of the sun's strength, a time of lush growth and long days. But the true genius lay in the equinoxes, those 2 days in spring and autumn when day and night are perfectly balanced. The spring equinox was the critical signal. It told them when the frosts were truly over and the soil was warming, the exact right moment to sow their precious seeds of barley and wheat. Planting too early meant seedlings would be killed by a late frost. Planting too late meant the crops would not mature before the autumn rains and shorter days returned. Their entire food supply, the very foundation of their settled society, hinged on getting this date exactly right. The Carnac Stones removed all guesswork. By observing the sunrise or sunset along a specific stone row, a community leader could announce to the entire village that the time for planting had officially arrived, backed by the granite authority of their ancestors. Then, as the sun climbed higher in the sky, they could track its progress toward the summer solstice. When it set in alignment with another set of stones, they knew the days would now begin to shorten, and the time for the first harvests was approaching. The autumn equinox was the final, urgent call to gather the last of the crops before the descent into winter. This was not a calendar on a wall, it was a calendar built into the landscape itself, a communal clock that everyone could see and understand. It synchronized the labor of an entire community, ensuring that every hand knew when to prepare the soil, when to sow, and when to reap. This precise coordination, enabled by the stones, would have led to more reliable harvests, food surpluses, and a stable, prosperous society with the time and resources to undertake projects of staggering ambition. The stones were their almanac, their agricultural department, and their insurance policy against hunger, all written in a language of sun and shadow on an epic scale. But what if the stones were not only meant to be seen, but also to be heard? A growing field of research called archaeoacoustics is exploring the possibility that the Carnac alignments were designed for sound. This theory suggests that the precise placement of these thousands of granite blocks was not just a visual map of the stars, but a carefully engineered acoustic landscape. Imagine standing within the dense rows of Kermario as dawn breaks. The stones, with their varied shapes and heights, could have acted as a giant sound diffraction grating, breaking up the wind to create a low, humming whisper, a natural chorus that changed with the weather and the seasons. This would have transformed the entire site into a living, breathing instrument, its voice woven from the elements themselves. During rituals, the sound of a single voice or a simple drum might have been channeled and amplified by the parallel rows, creating a powerful echo that seemed to come from the stones and the earth simultaneously. This auditory effect would have been deeply mystical, making participants feel as if they were not just observing the cosmos, but truly communicating with it, their own sounds merging with the voice of the landscape. Even more intriguing is the idea that the stones themselves were musical instruments. Some researchers have tested the granite monoliths and found that when struck with a small, hard stone, many of them produce clear, resonant tones like a giant, primitive xylophone. These are known as lithophones or rock gongs. A skilled individual could have moved along the rows, tapping specific stones to create a simple, haunting melody. This melody might have been more than just music. It could have been a form of acoustic mapping. Perhaps the pitch of each stone corresponded to the brightness of a star, or the sequence of notes traced the pattern of a constellation across the sky. This creates a breathtakingly complete picture of the Neolithic worldview, the ancient concept of the music of the spheres. This was the belief that the planets and stars in their motions created a celestial harmony, a perfect, inaudible music that governed the universe. If the Carnac Stones are a star map, then by making them sing, the builders were doing something profound. They were not just depicting the silent heavens, they were bringing them to life with sound, creating a harmony between the earth and the sky that could be both seen and heard. The silent sentinels of Carnac may have once been a grand stone orchestra, playing the music of the cosmos for an audience of stargazers. This grand design has not survived the millennia unscathed. The silent erosion of time and the active hand of humanity have left deep scars upon the landscape, creating gaps in the record that may forever obscure the full truth. For centuries, local farmers viewed the stones not as a sacred map, but as a convenient quarry. Countless monoliths were carted away to be broken down for building foundations, road fill, or simple fence posts. Others were deliberately toppled and buried to clear land for the plow, their purpose forgotten in favor of practical survival. Beyond human interference, the natural world has taken its own steady toll. The relentless Breton wind and rain have smoothed sharp edges and carved shallow grooves into the granite faces. More insidiously, the slow, steady sinking of the land has hidden entire stones. In the low-lying peat bogs that border some alignments, the soft, wet ground has slowly swallowed monoliths whole, pulling them down into the earth until only their tips peek above the surface or they vanish from sight entirely. When we walk among the 3,000 stones that remain, we are likely seeing only a fraction of the original masterpiece. Some estimates suggest that half of the complex, perhaps even more, has been lost. We are trying to read a star chart with half the constellations missing. How can we ever confirm that a specific curve of stones mirrored the Milky Way when a crucial cluster at its center was removed 200 years ago to build a barn? How can we verify a lunar alignment when the key Forsyte stone now lies buried deep beneath a meter of peat? These voids are more than just empty space, they are a permanent silence. They are the reason the star map theory may forever remain in the realm of compelling possibility rather than proven fact. Every missing stone is a lost word in an ancient language, a broken link in a chain of evidence that stretches back to the dawn of time. The same stones that have survived for 6,000 years now face a new challenge, us. Every year, hundreds of thousands of visitors walk among the ancient alignments, drawn by the same profound mystery that has captivated people for centuries. This immense popularity is a double-edged sword. The footfall of countless tourists, however well-intentioned, compacts the soil around the stones, damaging the fragile root systems of the surrounding ecosystem and slowly destabilizing the very monoliths they have come to see. A single touch, repeated millions of times, can wear away the ancient surface of the granite. The modern world presses in with its own demands, from the need for parking lots and visitor centers to the constant threat of pollution and urban development creeping ever closer to this sacred ground. Managing a living World Heritage Site is a delicate balancing act, a constant negotiation between allowing access to this wonder and ensuring it survives for the next generation of seekers. The stones are no longer just a puzzle for archaeologists, they are a test of our own stewardship. How do we protect something so irreplaceable while still sharing its magic with the world? The answer lies in a continuous, multifaceted effort of preservation. Simple measures make a profound difference. Wooden walkways now guide visitors along specific paths, protecting the delicate ground from erosion. Ropes and subtle fencing create a necessary barrier, a respectful distance that reminds us these are not sculptures for climbing, but fragile artifacts of a lost age. Conservationists carefully monitor the stones for signs of biological growth, like lichen and moss, which can slowly prise the granite apart as their roots dig deep. The work is ongoing and often invisible, a quiet, dedicated struggle against the slow and steady wear of time and human curiosity. Alongside this physical preservation, the intellectual work continues unabated. Archaeological teams armed with their LiDAR and ground-penetrating radar are still making new discoveries, finding buried stones and lost patterns that add new pieces to the eternal puzzle. Each season of digging and scanning is an act of preservation in itself, saving the site not from collapse but from oblivion, ensuring its story is recovered piece by piece. Our fascination with Carnac has evolved from simple wonder to a profound responsibility. We are no longer just interpreters of this ancient code, we are its guardians. The silent stones, having witnessed the rise and fall of entire civilizations, now depend on our choices. They challenge us to be worthy of their legacy, to ensure that their silent question to the cosmos continues to echo for another 6,000 years. So where does the evidence leave us in this 6,000-year-old case? We have the precise solar and lunar alignments, a repeating pattern that seems far too consistent to be mere chance. We have the sophisticated geometry and the potential use of a shared unit of measurement, suggesting a coordinated scientific effort rather than random placement. We have the compelling visual parallels between the stone rows and the ancient night sky, with specific clusters mirroring constellations like Orion and the sweeping arc of the Milky Way. These points build a powerful argument for a society of master astronomers, yet the objections are equally forceful. Without carvings or artifacts explicitly depicting stars, the theory relies on patterns we see from a modern perspective. Could we be connecting dots that were never meant to be connected, finding meaning in a design that was purely territorial or ceremonial? The sheer number of stones means some will inevitably align with the sky by accident. This is the core of the mystery, a tug of war between a breathtakingly elegant explanation and the sobering possibility that we are witnessing an immense and beautiful coincidence. You are now the detective standing in this field of silent witnesses. Do you see the work of Neolithic scientists who mapped the cosmos to secure their survival and touch the divine? Or do you see a profound social statement, a monument to community power whose celestial connections are secondary? The stones grant no easy verdict. They simply stand, challenging us to decide if their greatest secret is a map of the stars, or a mirror reflecting our own deep need to find order in the ancient and the unknown. The silent stones of Carnac have taken us on a journey across 6,000 years, from the patient labor of ancient farmers to the cutting-edge lasers of modern science. We have walked among their rows, traced their celestial alignments, and listened for the echoes of a lost worldview. The evidence builds a breathtaking portrait of our Neolithic ancestors not as primitive people, but as masterful astronomers who etched their understanding of the cosmos into the very earth. They tracked the sun to secure their harvests, followed the moon's complex dance, and may have even mapped the glittering path of the Milky Way with uncanny precision. This was more than a calendar, it was a sacred bridge between the earthly and the divine, a permanent testament to humanity's timeless urge to find our place in the universe. So we are left with one final, resonant question. Are the Carnac Stones the world's oldest surviving astronomy book, written in granite instead of ink? The stones hold their secret close. What do you believe they are? Share your own theories in the comments below. Subscribe for more journeys into the world's greatest historical mysteries, and never stop looking up at the stars.